Day 3 of the Tooheys International Cup for 18-foot skiffs on Sydney Harbour. We have a northeasterly breeze today, plenty of sunshine, plenty of breeze there too, and no doubt plenty of action. We may think about subtitling this event the Carnage Cup. There's been a fair bit of damage going on. We had a couple of the skiffs in for major surgery last night as a result of the tough racing we've had so far. Gestetner had a major job done, so did the Ella Bache. Michael Walsh on Prudential, as you saw yesterday, had major problems, but they're all back out there again today, doing their best to see if they can pick up the Xerox, currently leading the series, with the Gestetner just a little bit behind. So here we go for day 3. And a honking nor'easter it is, pumping through 25 to 30 knots for the handicap race. Prior to the race, Rob, I spoke to Adrian Cahalan, and she surprised me. She told me that she's not very popular with the boys at the moment. I asked her why.
Oh, that's a long story. A few collisions around marks and things like that. But and a few unhappy incidents in the protest room. But you know, it's the same as everybody really. It's really your own conception of yourself, isn't it? More than anything else.
Are the rest of the sailors ganging up on Michael Walsh?
I don't know about that, and I wouldn't like to say either. I might breach contempt of court or something.
On board the Tooheys Ross, at the top end of the course for the first time, the glandular fever-stricken Michael Bochner steering his boat around the top mark, and he is maintaining his lead attained with a handicap start of some 4 minutes at the beginning of the race. Going for the kite now.
It's interesting to see the difficulty the crew has moving in and out of the boat in these strong conditions. The waves are certainly up, and here we see them in the boat feverishly trying to get that spinnaker up. A very difficult manoeuvre, and you can just see how fresh the breeze is as we see Ericsson coming into the top mark. The bow nose diving as they're trying to pull away. Very, very tough conditions out there today, Bill.
Andrew DeVola rounded that top mark, not too far behind the Tooheys Ross. Tooheys Ross showing excellent pace, and oopsie-doozy. Pretty early on, the Tooheys Ross went for the big swim. We just saw her as Ericsson came tearing by, and there are the boys on the fin trying to bring her upright.
They have to have their weight on board that centreboard to stop the skiff from going upside down. Once they get the mast up level with the water, they can try and get that spinnaker under control and then try and get the boat upright again.
So with Michael Bochner going for a swim, we now have Ericsson leading this race. Second, and just approaching the top mark at the moment, is Ella Bache. Third, just ahead of this skiff, is the Prudential. We'll see her in a second. Just through the tack is the Xerox, and she's in 5th position at the moment, or I beg your pardon, in 4th position because of the capsize. And just behind the Xerox and the Prudential, coming in 5th position, is the Gestetner.
You just saw then how much ground you lose every time the boat's tacked. Prudential tacked some 50 metres ahead of Xerox. In a matter of seconds, the gap is closed to within 2 boat lengths of each other.
And also, the conditions really starting to tell now. Rob, the mainsail starting to flick around. What does that mean?
Well, what it's indicating is the breeze strength is actually getting up beyond the range of the sails. It means the sails are too big, and the mainsails tend to flick inside out. They get sucked to weather by the pressure difference from one side of the sail to the other, and you can see it there. Prudential and Xerox heavily overpowered. They're trying to sail their skiffs as high into the wind as possible to keep them flat, and in so doing so, the angle of attack of the sails causes them to suck the weather and flick.
At the top mark, Adrian Cahalan rounding now in 2nd position because Tooheys Ross, we think, is still in the water. Round they go. Whoa, and up comes the bottom. Nearly down they went.
Very, very close there. There's a big problem with 18-foot skiffs. So that fine in the bow, and these large sails tend to drive the bows down into the waves on those bearaways. And here we see the jib flapping, trying to depower the boat. Charlie Diekman has moved into the centre of the boat, hoisting the blue spinnaker. As we come back down to Prudential, rounding the top mark, let's see how he handles the rounding. Oh, hurly-durly.
That was a rough one. I think they were lucky to escape that. Right behind him, but inside him, the Xerox. There she goes.
Nice rounding.
And moved ahead of the Prudential. And behind the two of them, Gestetner, but Gestetner's made up time. Rob, we're on board with Michael Walsh on board the Prudential. They're just setting the spinnaker. Let's see what sounds we get off the Prudential as they now are 1/4 of the way through the race. They've got through up into 4th position. They've set their kite, and they're just behind the Xerox.
Come back, mate. Back later.
How fast, Rob?
Roll down here.
I'd say they have to be doing 20, 25 knots there. They're flying.
Roll in. Please drop. Good one for Baza.
You can see them flapping the spinnaker, trying to avoid. Xerox is very close below them. Very arduous conditions here.
Xerox in strife over on their right. Xerox struggling with it now.
A big gust of breeze, he's lost control, he's lost steerage.
Be careful.
Oh, this is going to be close.
Ease it. Go below, get in. Get in, cover.
Oh, so close. So close. How did they ever avoid that collision?
That was amazing bit of steering by Mike Walsh. They were committed to go below them. They couldn't get above them because of Xerox wiping out right in front of them. And here we have the leader of the series and the favourite in the series in the tide.
From the other side, the same incident from the other side. Talk us through it, Rob.
Well, we can see here there's a lot of breeze here. Xerox accelerates in this gust. Prudential flaps his spinnaker because they're very close. And all of a sudden, Xerox loses steerage. You can see the leeward wing dig in. The boat slows and rounds up right in the path of Prudential. And he's only got one option, and that's to pull away. And how they didn't hit, that's incredible.
So there was the Prudential up around 25 knots. Oh, over they go. Okay, from another angle. We caught it also from the chase boat. Let's have a look at it from behind.
You can see here how Michael's anticipated Xerox's problems and he's pulled hard away. You can see the water rushing around the rudder. He's trying to pull it away aggressively. And how he didn't hit his head on that wing. Who said sailing's like watching grass grow?
Okay, that was as close as you will ever see to thousands of dollars worth of damage being avoided. I don't know how. We've got this in slow motion. We're just preparing it. Here it is in slow motion.
I thought he might have tried to go above Xerox, but he committed himself to come away. And it's amazing he kept steerage all the way through this because the wing's digging in. You can see a crew member jumping off. One of his crew members bailed out to avoid any dangerous situation to himself. And there goes Michael Walsh landing on the mainsail.
I might say, Rob, that the wing of Michael Walsh's skiff went within about 6 inches of decapitating Phil Barnett there too. He was lying on the sail and it very nearly knocked him over. In the meantime, Carnage in the background, Gestetner pumps on through the course. She's got the spinnaker set, Dave Cummins, and with those two skiffs in the water, Dave Cummins has moved up into third position. Currently we have the Ericsson leading. Ella Bache is second, Gestetner is third. We have got the two Schross still in the tide, and now we've got the Xerox and Prudential also swimming, and I think you'll find Prudential's in strife.
Gestetner's getting very close. He's jibing now. Has to go back to that right-hand side. Oh, capsize.
He's gone too. We weren't able to hold the picture, but the Gestetner also now in the swim.
You can see how much difficulty these guys are having. The bow digging down as they drive down the waves. You really need a spinnaker up. Even though it's blowing this hard, the spinnaker tends to lift the bow and makes it a little bit easier to steer downwind. And I'd be very, very careful sailing as defensive as this is what Ericsson is.
Well, it's caused them a problem already, Rob, because the Ella Bache kept her kite up, Adrian Cahalan, and she snuck through and she's taken the lead. The position in the race now is that the Ella Bache leads. Ericsson is currently second. And the rest of the fleet are getting a taste of Sydney Harbour. They're all capsized and struggling to get upright again. So Adrian Cahalan leads at the bottom mark. We are halfway through this race.
She's sailing fantastically in these conditions. You've seen all the other boats coming to grief, and 47 kilos of prime female, and here she is battling it out with the boys and just showing them how good she is, and she's sailing a fantastic race.
The pressure on board those boats in these conditions is immense, physical pressure, and being alert and avoiding capsizes, and it's very, very difficult. What are the crew all doing here, Rob?
We can see Charlie Diekman, the boy at the top of the screen. He's working the headsail and he's looking around, probably finding a spot that they can tack. They want to come back to this side of the course. Let's just have a look at them as they tack now. Very difficult in these conditions. The boat slows down, the drag on the sails goes up, and this is when the 18s are the most vulnerable.
Adrian sailing very cautiously, easing away through the tacks. Sails flapping, everything eased, taking it easy, but getting through the course and still maintaining the lead. And this is a great effort by the little girl.
You've got to be careful, Bill. I talked about sailing defensive, and they're sailing safely, which is great, but they've still got to keep pushing these skiffs. If they go too defensive, that's when you get in strife.
Gestetner up again. Gestetner back up and going. They've got that boat upright very quickly indeed, and so has Phil Barnett. So Xerox and Gestetner back up. I can tell you, Rob, Prudential is down and I think out. They've got a major problem.
What's happened to Ericsson?
Ericsson, we believe, also now has a problem. Ericsson has swum. The condition of the race is that we now have the Ella Bache leads. Second, is this skiff, the Xerox.
Hang on. Oh,
Oh, no.
that was a terrible jibe. A very bad jibe by the Xerox boys. They're going to be very tired after this race.
There's the Ericsson in strife over on the left. On the right, Tooheys Ross back up and going again. That's good for Michael Bochner. Oh, and back in the tide again. This breeze is conquering them all.
The breeze probably up around 30, 32 knots, and it's really playing havoc with the skiffs, but here you go. Ella Bache showing them how to do it.
Well, all the hot shots are in the tide, getting a taste of the harbour. Adrian Cahalan, who really wasn't rated a big chance to do anything spectacular in this series, I'm starting to fancy her chances. In the foreground, Xerox trying to get back up again. The Gestetner has sailed on by, and she is now approaching the bottom mark and about to get to the halfway mark in this race, and she is now in second position and in great shape. I would say that Dave Cummins is in excellent shape. Maybe he can catch up to the Ella Bache if...
We've got a problem there, Bill. Something's gone wrong there. That was an unforced error. It'd be interesting to see what happened there, because that's not like Davey Cummings to capsize like that.
Here we are, on the scene, chase boat.
Oh, look at the rudder. They've snapped the rudder blade. It's a white foil at the back of the boat. That's just sheer clean off. That just shows you the pressure that's on these boats, and look at the disappointment on the crew.
What's happened?
The rudder blade has actually snapped. You can see it there just flapping around in the breeze, and that's the end of the day for the Gestetner.
I guess like not having a steering wheel on your car.
Rennie Arnoux wouldn't be able to drive without one of those, Bill.
In the meantime, back at the top end of the course, 3/4 of the way through the race, now headed for the finish line, Adrian Cahalan and the team aboard Ella Bache.
I like it, Bill. They're going for the spinnaker. It's the only way to do it. They've got to set spinnakers. The big blue spinnaker with the pink lips, they're smiling. They're out in front. You can see the spectator wash there.
I take my hat off to Adrian Cahalan. She's just a really hot competitor. She'll never give up. They've had to give up. The Ericsson in the background, Tooheys Ross trying to come back up again. The Ericsson also, we learn, has a broken rudder. 2 broken rudders so far. Ericsson out of the race. Xerox back up again, sailing through the picture, up into second position and trying to make some sort of a dent in the lead of Ella Bache.
You can see here again Phil Barnett. They'd be very, very tired, him and his crew, but they're back in this race trying to catch this skiff, Ella Bache. Now they've dropped their spinnaker, going down towards the bottom part of the course. They're going to attempt a jibe here.
Getting set to go to the finish line. Very tricky part. Uncertainty on board. Watch out, watch out.
Here we see the boat very slow and oh
no. So, Xerox at the top end of the course, or getting up towards the top end of the course. Tooheys Ross back up and going again. Well done, Michael Bochner. Keep in mind, he's got glandular fever. He shouldn't be out there. The doctor tried to stop him. Michael Bochner said, no, I'm going out sailing. Now, he is still on the first leg of the course. He is on the first round, so he is actually 1 lap behind Ella Bache. There is Ella Bache. They're in the drink, but they're a lap ahead of Tooheys Ross.
You notice here, Bill, that Michael's elected to jibe in the wake of the powerboat. The breeze lightens there, just like being the wind shadow behind a large building, and consequently a safe jibe. Xerox now in second position, trying to catch Ella Bache, who's in the water. You can see the crew member in the boat trying to pull that spinnaker right to the top of the mast, and look at the speed of that boat. Look at it go.
And that's a major concern for Adrian Cahalan. She's down there in the drink. She's got the Xerox now about 600 metres up behind her. Spinnaker set going like a rocket ship. She's got to get the skiff back upright. And here they are, trying to get it back upright.
A little bit of acrobatics here by Charlie Deekman, the forward hand, has the rope attached to the wing, which they call a chicken line, which is used in capsizing to pull these boats up. And this is very tiring. A capsize is... it just ruins your day. You're not supposed to do it, and they're watching every moment. This boat, Xerox screaming down at them. Can they get it up and cross that finishing line before Xerox gets to them?
They're within 150 metres. The Ella Bache must get away smoothly. If they swim again, the Xerox is going to come past them, provided, of course, they can stay upright and without any spinnaker on. Ferocious conditions. Oh, nose going down. Can they survive?
Well, the Bache's up and running. Can they get to that finishing line? They're in all sorts of disarray at the moment. They're getting very close to finishing. I think they're going to make it, Bill.
They're looking all right. They're looking all right. Adrian Cahalan, there's the finish boat. There's the finish boat, and they go through the finish line. now.
Here comes Xerox, jeez.
And are they happy? You bet they are. She's conquered all the heroes, she's conquered all the hot shots, and she's now well and truly in contention in the series too, Rob. That's the most important thing about this.
A great performance, and look at the smiles, it tells it all.
Ella Bache, first in the first race today. Second, Xerox coming down to the line. Tooheys Ross battling away, and all things being equal, she will finish third. We're coming up to a start in the second race. We've got no Prudential, no Ericsson, and we have also no Gestetner. Two broken rudders and one broken tiller extension on board the Prudential. She's retired also, so coming up for the start of the second race, it's a scratch start. We've got three contenders. Looked to me like Tooheys Ross broke the start in this second race.
Certainly did, and the judges have seen it, so they'll be scooting across there to place an infringement on it. Meanwhile, Xerox on top of Ella Bache, heading off to the left-hand side of the course, and the breeze is still there, Bill. It's 28, 30 knots. And another tough race for these three skiffs.
The umpire out to say something to Tooheys Ross. Very much looked like they broke the start, and the umpire having a word to them. I suspect they'll be telling them there's a 360-degree turn up the track somewhere for them as a penalty. We are on board Xerox, about to go through attack, I believe, changing directions now for the first time, coming up the course and in the lead.
You notice the timing there, Bill. The forward hand came in first. They changed their weight from one side of the boat, and meanwhile the loads are still on the boat. Each time they pull that rope, there's 120 pounds of weight, like lifting a bag of cement each time they pull that main sheet. I think Phil Barnett's got the bit between his teeth in this race. He wants to do better than that.
Tooheys Ross coming across behind Xerox. Michael Bochner doing well up the first leg of this second race today in second position. In third position, Ella Bache at the top end. And dropping behind, obviously doesn't have the boat speed, even though she won that first race.
Yeah, you can see the difference there. They started together, and she's a couple of 100 metres behind. They might have had problem tacking, but Xerox looking very smooth, and they're going to be hard to beat, I think, in this race.
Tooheys Ross coming up towards the top end of the course. She's going very quickly on the breeze at the moment, not too far behind Xerox at all.
You can see the rip in the mainsail below the colour patch, Tooheys Ross. That's where one of the crew members has fallen from the wing and's gone straight through the Kevlar sails. The sail fabrics are so light that they just can't handle someone jumping through them.
The way things are going for Michael Bochner at the moment, it almost looks like his sails are grinning there, Rob. The racing turning out pretty well for him today. We've got three out of the race. He's now in second position and looking like picking up more points in this series.
You can see here Xerox, the crew members coming in off the wing, tacking. You know, what's the balance of the boat? You've got to feel the boat turning, hooking up to the trapeze wires. And as the power goes under the sails, the crew weight has to go out in their wings to keep them upright, and the boat accelerates.
And indeed, Xerox at the top mark for the first time. 1/4 of this race over. Xerox leading comprehensively by some 25 seconds in second position, and coming up towards the top mark is Tooheys Ross. Third, about another 20 seconds behind Tooheys Ross, is Ella Bache.
You can see here there's a little bit of lack of preparation. They had to hoist the spinnaker on the left-hand side of the boat, which we call a weather set. It sticks to the sails, doesn't blow out cleanly from the rig, and consequently a very slow set.
Which gives more of an opportunity to Michael Bochner. Tooheys Ross now, there's the top mark, the little flag there is the top mark, and he now also is a quarter of the way through the race, and so far none of these skiffs have swum, unlike the first race. Why is that, Rob? They seem to have better control of the conditions. Second top, so I beg your pardon.
I think, Bill, that the breeze is still there and they're getting used to the conditions, and we just saw Ella Bache there, tacking and very close to the shore, and a gust off the land that you cannot see, and consequently they're in the tide.
Xerox now, after that difficult set with the sail clinging to the jib, now they've got it free.
Flapping it now to avoid that yacht.
Okay.
It's sailing relatively safely here. They know they've got a good lead, so it's safety first, but gee, you just can't back off. You've got to drive these boats to the limit. You can see how close Ella Bache is to the rocks. Now this is what they call a Chinese roll. They're going to flip the boat up, try to keep it upright, but the wind's too strong. Down they go again. Very close to the rocks.
So the job's still to be done on Ella Bache. They've got to get it back upright. Meantime, zipping off down the track, full steam ahead.
You can just see how interesting these boats are going downwind. Slight tiller movement. You can see Phil Barnett there holding that long silver tiller extension. He's moving that tiller probably only 2 inches, and you can see how responsive these skiffs are. But look at Michael Bochner go, they're flying.
And Michael Bochner, you can just see the war paint on there, lots of zinc cream on his face to stop the sun from burning him, but it certainly isn't stopping him from going fast.
This is what, this is why you sail 18 footers. There's no other boats go as quick as this. They're out on the harbour. They've got the whole harbour to themselves, so they've got 30 knots of northeast breeze and just have a go at them. That's fantastic.
Full steam ahead on board the Touche Ross. Now 150 metres behind Xerox and catching, I believe, in second position, the Touche Ross.
Yes, I think they have gained. They're carrying a line of breeze down. Xerox attempting to jibe here, changing direction to get across that bottom mark. You can see Greg Homan in the middle of the boat. So Greg's on the wing. Adam South passing the spinnaker sheet out to Greg, going out on trapeze. Now Phil Barnett concentrating on keeping the boat flat, keeping it afloat.
The chase boat here, I can tell you, doing its best to stay with Xerox. Xerox accelerating away. The acceleration when the spinnaker sets, and off they go up through 20, 25, 28 knots of boat speed as the chase boat does its best to catch up to them.
For those powerboat people, that's a Bertram 25 going flat out trying to keep up with an 18-foot skiff. He's probably running at $100 an hour, and these boats are doing it for free.
That's right, the petrol they've got is the breeze, and that costs nothing. Xerox sailing beautifully, now trucking up through 28 knots of boat speed and exploding her way down the harbour, headed for the bottom mark, approaching the halfway mark in this race.
You can notice in this shot the bow of the boat's coming out of the water. The crew are all balanced. Phil Barnett just moving that tiller ever so slightly to keep the boat upright and tracking in the one direction. Greg Homan, right-hand side of the screen, leaning out, controlling the spinnaker. We see Adam South moving in the middle of the boat. He's just pulled the spinnaker bag open in anticipation of the spinnaker drop. And look at this, the gust of breeze is coming onto them, and the powerboat is having trouble keeping up with them.
The skipper, Phil Barnett, and Adam South moving further out onto the wings, getting more pressure. Out goes Adam South. More and more pressure, more and more speed.
Bow bearing down every now and again, but the spinnaker lifting the bow all the time. Slight tiller alterations. You can just see Phil Barnett ever so slightly moving that tiller. It has to be so much concentration on this leg of the course.
Back up and running again. Adrian Cahalan in third position now. They've uprighted the skiff, gone round the top mark, set the spinnaker, and now halfway down that leg and back in the race.
Some big seaways there. You can see the waves building up. Phil Barnett's dropped the spinnaker and jibed on board Xerox. The jib flapping. Greg Homan will be trying to pull that jib on. Out pops the Tooheys.
And at the halfway mark in this race, Phil Barnett, he's got it by the neck. He's leading. We're halfway through it, and he's got a lead of some 48 seconds. At this stage, 48-second lead over the Touche Ross.
We see here Touche Ross dousing that spinnaker. They jibe, what they call a jibe drop, stuffing that spinnaker down in the bag. Both crew members in the boat trying to stuff that spinnaker away. Michael Bochner out in the wing, steering, keeping the boat upright, anticipating the breeze. Back to the leader.
Up the course, coming up here with the wind coming across his right-hand side is Phil Barnett and the crew on Xerox. They are now, I think, starting to draw away a little bit from Michael Bochner on Touche Ross. They tack across, change directions.
That was a good tack. You noticed that both wings kept clear of the water during the tack, and you saw the speed drop was very insignificant.
Back at the bottom mark, Adrian Cahalan, she's got a fight on her hands. The breeze pumping through up around 28 knots, trying to get round the bottom mark, pulls away. Acceleration there. What they did, Bill, was what they call a granny. Instead of jibing round the mark, they've actually tacked and then pulled away. It's a safety precaution in a lot of breeze. They know they've got third position, they just have to finish, so they're sailing very safely. Touche Ross still very much in contention, in second position. I don't know that they can catch Xerox. Xerox looks completely in control. The crew seem to have come to terms with the conditions. They're approaching the top mark now for the final time, nearly at the three-quarter way mark, but make no mistake, Michael Bochner on this machine, on the Touche Ross, not giving up for a second. That hull, Bill, that loves these conditions. It was designed for 15 knots and above and revelling in the conditions. You can see here the Xerox guys coming round the weather mark. Greg Homan in the bag there, unclipping the spinnaker. Adam South wrenching that spinnaker up to the top of the mast. You've got to remember, this is the second race. They've had a couple of capsizes. These guys will be really tight. There's no time to take in a deep breath because it usually ends up full of water. Nice one, Rob, and Spinnaker now set. Adam South hands out the sheet to Greg Homan. What's Adam up to now?
Well, what he's doing, they've just pulled the spinnaker up, and the halyard, there's probably about 30, 40 feet of line in the bottom of the boat. You just saw the acceleration of the hull knocked him over. He's tidying up the boat. So if they have to drop the spinnaker at the bottom of this run, everything's going to run cleanly, so they can have a nice, safe finish. You can see Phil Barnett out on the wing. He's on trapeze, balanced. He's got his feet locked into the wings because those waves are hitting them at a speed of which it could just knock him straight off the back of the boat. And you can see the tiller just moving ever so slightly. The finesse of steering in these conditions with brute force.
Greg Homan right out on the left with around about 140 pounds of pressure in this breeze, and every time he pulls that rope he's pulling in 140 pounds. He eases it and pulls it in to keep the pressure in the sail.
You can see how fresh the breeze is, Bill. It hasn't backed off at all. We've still got 28 knots of breeze. The bow, every now and again, diving into the seas. Slight course alteration by Phil Barnett just clears the bow and lets it raise out of the water. And
crossing the heads of Sydney Harbour now. Crossing the heads of Sydney Harbour. New Zealand straight across the way from those heads. But Xerox in control. In third position, Ella Bache. She's behind Touche Ross, but I can tell you the umpires have just informed me Touche Ross has not done that 360-degree penalty for breaking the start. Down towards the finish line now. Xerox in control. Spinnaker still set. They've been able to hold it all the way down the course. About to change directions to cross the finish line.
You notice they maintain speed through the jibe. Very important. If the spinnaker's gone to the other side, slight delay in the wind going into the spinnaker.
And coming up to the finish line now, the Xerox is through. She's through in first position. A tremendous win to Phil Barnett. Coming down in second position, Michael Bochner. There's the finish boat. Through she goes in second position. Great performance in this race. But unfortunately, didn't take any notice of the umpires. When they said to do a 360, Michael said, go and get lost. So the umpires have penalised him one position, which brings Ella Bache up into second. So first Xerox, second Ella Bache, third Touche Ross.
A gutsy performance by Adrian Cahalan and the crew on board Ella Bache with a first and a second, sharing that with Xerox, a first and a second. Xerox still well in control of this series, Bill.
Xerox in control. Nice jibe there from Ella Bache coming down towards the line. And indeed, Xerox leads the series. Ella Bache is up there in second position, and rocketing into contention now is Michael Bochner on Touche Ross, now up into third. So, at the end of 3 days racing, it's still wide open. The good performers today who stayed on the water have got control of the series just at the moment, and we're looking forward to bringing these machines down to Canberra in March during the festival. Hopefully we'll get breezes like this, and this is the sort of action we'll be able to show you. Looking forward to coming back tomorrow for Day 4 in the Tooheys International Cup.